Senate Majority Leader John Thune just unleashed a fiery attack on Democrats, accusing them of trying to completely defund ICE and Border Patrol agents during a heated Senate showdown. Framing the fight as a battle over law enforcement and national security, Thune warned that Democrats are pushing America toward zero agents at the border, setting off another explosive clash over immigration, policing, and border security in Washington.
Majority Leader.
I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Mr. President, we have a lot to do over the next 2 weeks. Confirm Kevin Warsh to the Federal Reserve, approve a nominations package, and fund law enforcement at the Department of Homeland Security. That last item, Mr. President, should not need to be on our agenda. We should have been able to fund border security and immigration enforcement officers as part of the final Homeland Security funding agreement. But my Democrat colleagues refused. In fact, the Democrat leader said today that Democrats will fight legislation to fund law enforcement at DHS with, quote, every tool we have, end quote. Mr. President, it's difficult to believe that we're here again. We all remember the defund the police movement embraced by the left and members of the Democrat Party. We also remember how cities who moved to defund the police backtracked in pretty short order. Because it turns out, Mr. President, as even some leftists came to realize, we need police officers. We need law enforcement. We live in a fallen world, and there are always going to be people out there who seek to hurt and exploit the innocent. And we need men and women who will stand between the innocent and danger. We need men and women who courageously dedicate their lives to law enforcement. And all of this should go without saying, Mr. President. I can scarcely think of anything more obvious. But apparently the need for law enforcement is not obvious to my Democrat colleagues, because they're right back to a defund the police position. This time it's defunding law enforcement at the Department of Homeland Security, specifically Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The men and women who patrol our borders and take dangerous, criminal, illegal immigrants off of our streets. And Mr. President, when I say defunding law enforcement at DHS, I don't mean reducing the budget. I mean complete and total defunding. My Democrat colleagues refuse to provide a single dollar for the men and women who protect our borders. They refuse to provide a single dollar for the men and women who take dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens off of our streets. And I want you to think about that for just a minute, Mr. President. My Democrat colleagues apparently believe that there should be no physical presence at our borders and no law enforcement officers to deport dangerous criminals who have entered our country illegally. Mr. President, we had 4 years of chaos at the southern border under President Biden. But at least we had the Border Patrol, overstretched as it was. Now Democrats apparently believe in removing all law enforcement officers from our nation's borders. Mr. President, I shouldn't need to state the obvious here that we need border security and immigration enforcement officers to protect our nation, just as we need police officers and FBI agents and Secret Service agents and all of the law enforcement officers who serve our communities. Democrats might like to pretend otherwise, but there are dangerous individuals who would like to make their way illegally across our border. Drug traffickers, human traffickers, other criminals, terrorists. And the men and women of the Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement are the men and women who stand between us and these dangerous individuals, who turn them back at our borders and take them out of our communities if they do manage to make their way into our country. These are the men and women that my Democrat colleagues want to defund. Not reform, Mr. President. Nope. My Democrat colleagues repeatedly rejected reforms. They want to defund. And defund completely. Zero agents at our border. Zero agents to deport criminals here in the U.S. illegally. That's what my Democrat colleagues opted for. It's Police Week this week, Mr. President. a week to honor our nation's law enforcement officers and remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice while protecting our communities. Perhaps it will remind my Democrat colleagues of just how much we rely on law enforcement and just how much we need all of our nation's law enforcement officers. Mr. President, I now move to proceed to calendar number 296, I should say, SRS 526.
The clerk will report.
Counter number 296, SRS 572, resolution withholding the pay of senators if a government shutdown occurs.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
Clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to counter number 296, SRS 526, a resolution withholding the pay of senators if a government shutdown occurs, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
Tonight, Washington erupted into another explosive battle over immigration and border security after Senate Majority Leader John Thune accused Democrats of pushing what he called a full-scale effort to defund ICE and Border Patrol. In a fiery Senate speech, Thune claimed Democrats are refusing to provide funding for the very agencies responsible for securing America's borders and deporting dangerous criminals, framing the fight as a direct threat to national security and public safety. The clash comes as immigration once again becomes one of the biggest political flashpoints in America. Republicans are aggressively tying Democrats to the old defund the police movement, while Democrats argue the debate is really about immigration reform, accountability, and how federal enforcement agencies operate. But Thune took the rhetoric to another level, repeatedly accusing Democrats of wanting zero agents at the border and zero agents deporting criminals. It was a speech clearly designed not just for the Senate chamber, but for the broader political war heading into the next election cycle. At the center of this fight is a growing divide over how America should handle border enforcement after years of political battles over illegal immigration, asylum policies, deportations, and the role of federal law enforcement agencies like ICE and Customs and Border Protection. And politically, Republicans believe this issue remains one of their strongest weapons. By framing Democrats as weak on border security and hostile toward law enforcement, GOP leaders are trying to keep immigration front and center in the national conversation. Meanwhile, Democrats argue Republicans are exaggerating the situation for political gain while avoiding serious bipartisan immigration solutions. But regardless of where people stand politically, one thing is very clear from this speech. The battle over immigration funding, border security, and federal law enforcement is only getting more intense, and both parties are preparing for a major political showdown.